First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing frogs.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD. I ain't got nothing.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective, but an erratic detective is Michael Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, girl, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hello there, welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Akash Persaud. Good evening to Akash. It's Labor Day. Without labor, there'll be no world. Not millions, but billions of people give their labor to the world so the world can continue. Karl Marx called it surplus value, meaning what the employers earn is surplus value, and labor should get some of that. Without labor, there's no world. So happy Labor Day. Welcome to Labor Day. We have in our studio two persons that are intellectually, politically, and unionistically equipped to discuss trade unionism, trade union in Guyana, the past 10, 15, 20, 25 years. One of our guests this evening is a minister of government who have been very, very generous to this program. This is his fourth appearance. And every time we call, he's busy, but he takes time off from his busy schedule. One appearance, he was in the interior. He came to Georgetown the afternoon, and he made an appearance here in the evening. That is Minister of Labour, Joseph Hamilton. Our other guest is Dr. Nanda Gopaul. He has been permanent secretary in the office of the president. He's been a minister. He's been a UG councillor, but foremost, he started his career in trade unionism. Dr. Gopaul, in my opinion, has written one of the best books, perhaps the best book. Ashton Chase, A History of Trade Unionism, is about the history of trade unionism. Dr. Gopaul's book is about the struggle of workers. It is called Resistance and Change, The Struggles of Guyana Workers 1964-1994, with emphasis on the sugar industry. This is one of the best books written on trade union struggles in Guyana. Please call my cell if you want a copy of the book from Dr. Gopaul. I think you should read it. If you're doing nothing this evening and you want to read the book tomorrow, please call my cell number 614-5927. I'll transmit it to Dr. Gopaul, and so you can get a copy of one of Guyana's best books on the history of workers' struggle. Now, both of these gentlemen are from better BV. Dr. Gopaul was born in BV. Minister Hamilton lives in BV. But I'm sure they're familiar with the term Jambilash. It's common in Guyanese parlance. So I don't know if Minister Hamilton, he doesn't mince his word, will put a Jambilash on the head of the GPSU, Patrick Yard, and the head of the TUC, Lincoln Lewis. But one of our most highly rated program in terms of numbers was a debate Mr. Hamilton had with Vincent Alexander. And Sparks flew then, so I don't know if Sparks will fly tonight and John Bilash will be pelted. But I don't know if I'm putting my foot in my mouth. It looks like a John Bilash was pelted on Dr. Gopaul by Moses Nagamootoo. I don't know if Dr. Gopaul is going to pelt a John Bilash on Nagamootoo this evening, but John Bilash is a serious slash. So, welcome to my co-host Leonard Gildari
Akash
and
Persaud.
Akash Persaud. Minister, it's always good to have
Pleasure,
you here.
Freddie.
This is the fourth time. I hope it would not be.
Pleasure.
I hope
Yes,
there's a
yes,
fifth. Dr. Gopaul was here a year ago. I can't call you Dr. Gopaul. Gopes, I always call you Gopes. You signed your book for me from Gopes. Now, I don't know if Minister would want to get into this. So here is the John Bilash. The Minister may agree, disagree, Akash may disagree, Gopes may disagree. I don't know if it's a John Bilash, but this is what Moses Nagamootoo wrote about Dr. Gopaul in his autobiography. This is Labor Day, and Moses Nagamootoo is saying that Dr. Gopaul, in one episode, tried to de-recognize worker struggle. Let's read what he has to say, and then we'll see if John Bilash is being pelted. Nanda Gopaul, who headed one of the two sugar unions and became leader of a fly-by-night party, Guyana Labour Party, had burned the effigy of Chadi Jagan in Success Village on the east coast of Demerara and challenged the venerable PPP leader to a popularity poll, boasting that he would defeat Chadi. That effigy burner was elevated by the PPP. He was made an MP, a government minister, later chairman of the state-owned sugar industry. For the purpose of the subject tonight of this program, here is what Nagamootoo said. When the industry started to collapse, Dr. Gopaul threatened to de-recognize Garu when the union questioned incompetence and inefficiency. Minister Hamilton, is that a John Bilash?
No, look, okay, a person decide I'm going to write an autobiography. A person decide I'm going to write a book. In my view, you read Nanda's book, it speaks to edifying people.
It's a good book.
What has happened. Huh?
One of the better books in Guyana.
But what you're reading there, apparently, and based on people who have commented, I have not read the Nagamootoo book, it is, everything he's suggesting is somebody else is responsible for some other thing. He hasn't taken responsibility. A good book, when a man is writing his autobiography, they take responsibility. Because what they're doing is exposing their life to people who did not know them. I am sure if Nanda is to write a book about an autobiography, he will start a bit of acting triumph so that the young people will have an understanding about who Nanda Gopaul is, the man, so that they wouldn't think that because now he has been able to elevate himself, that is where he was all the time. And that is what an autobiography is. It's supposed to challenge young people who will read that book. To say that, listen, life is not where you start, is where you want to end life. But everything I hear people who read that book suggesting that Nagamootoo don't want to take responsibility for any of his actions. So how do we present his book is attack people. And I know Nanda is capable of responding to whatever he has said there. But going forward, unless you write books that will elevate and teach young Guyanese, you shouldn't write at all. I give you this example of myself. I appeared at the Walter Rodney Commission of Inquiry. I spent 3 days in the box.
Your testimony was riveting.
And one,
iconoclastic.
the
Revealing.
one of the commissioners from Jamaica, she asked me a question. She said, in these circumstances, most times it is the persons who have been oppressed, the victims who come forward to testify. Could you say to me, why would you do this? And I made this point to her. The fact that I want young people to get an understanding as to what transpired in this country. So even though I will put myself there before them and I'm culpable, it might be shameful at that time, but the fact is, I believe it was a good thing as a citizen, so that young people will have an appreciation of our bad history of this country, so that they will not allow at all any such thing to perpetuate on this country again. And that is what you do as an elder. It must always be teaching moments. It must not be where you just rabble-rouse and you write a book maybe to get some cash on it. And everything I hear people talking about this book, basically is this man isn't taking responsibility for actions. Even in government, it's somebody else. But my good friend Nanda and my countryman, we are made of strong stock. And by the way, let me say this, there is no village in this country, Freddie, if you didn't know that before, that has nurtured and brought forth more ministers of government in Guyana than Bedouin.
You got two here.
And I close on that, my initial comment.
Nanda, so are you going to put a John B. Lash for Nagamootoo?
Well, I want to say Happy May Day, Guyana, and that I have never ever lost my working class roots. I have done more than Nagamootoo can ever dream in 100 years. If he were to live another 100 years, what he will do for labor, or what he has done for labor, or the Guyanese people. In fact, he's betrayed Guyanese people, and I can write an entire book. I can speak for an entire day or 2 days on the evil of Moses Nagamootoo, the selfishness, his crass behavior, his rapaciousness, his vindictive mind. What he has written there is not new. Moses Nagamootoo tried to label me all sort of things before, and he ended up in the court. He had to beg Chedi Jagan to beg me and my lawyer Ashton Chase not to take the matter further through his lawyer Moin Magdoum. And Magdoum, I have the letter written by Moin Magdoum on his behalf, apologizing profusely that Moses didn't mean that and wouldn't mean that. You know what he said? In the presence of Charles Ramson, who was senior counsel there, now Justice Ramson, and Frank Basir, the chief works officer. They were all friends and colleagues. He said, Nanda Gopaul is a fraud. Nanda Gopaul is a CIA because I went on a State Department scholarship just before that. Srichan went on the same scholarship. Srichan is not CIA.
A British scholarship and an American scholarship.
Right. And he said that the car I drive was derived from CIA funds. I had a fireboard.
What year was this?
This is in the 70s. And so, and that I burnt Chedi effigy. Now let me clear that up. I sued him because nothing was true. He said my qualifications were fake, that I don't have a doctorate. That was presented.
From Warwick University of all places?
It was the university, the DPhil I have, and it's not a PhD, it's a DPhil.
Yeah, Doctor of Philosophy.
And it was the #1 business school in the world at that time. Mandela was accorded an honorary doctorate. And the same year when I was to be on stage with Mandela to receive our parchment, I chose immediately after defending my thesis to come back to Guyana to be on stage with Chedi Jagan on May 25th, 1996. I came back. Chetty Jagan sent his car with his driver to pick me up at the airport because we had a flight delay. And immediately upon coming into the Pegasus, where Nasi 50th anniversary was being held, because that held dear to me, I addressed that conference with Chetty there, and Nagamootoo should listen to the tape, what Chetty Jagan had to say then about me. Justice Ramson was there, Sister Noel Meniz was there, the Indian High Commissioner was there, and so were many, many Catholic priests, etc. And they were at Nasi conference. You know why? They valued the role of Nasi at that point in time, and up to now, Nasi had played a significant role. But Nagamootoo, the issue of burning Chetty effigy came up during a militant strike in which I disagreed with Dr. Jagan of ending the strike. And there was absolutely nothing unfriendly about it. I just told him I think we should continue the strike. It is gaining momentum. It was the first time that sugar and bauxite workers were united in a struggle, and we shouldn't let them down. Our strategy different. Chetty was concerned for my safety, and he said, let's end the strike, because at the rate you're going, they will kill you, like they did to Rodney. And there is a time to live for another day. An objective situation will arrive. I disagreed with him. We had a disagreement, and I continued the strike despite he called off the strike. We ended in harmony 1 week after as a result of an intervention between Ripu Daman Persaud, Ashton Chase, and myself with Chetty Jagan at Ashton Chase's house. At that point in time, Chetty said, look, to Chase and thing, if he had 20 more young men with that courage, he would take the risk. He didn't mention Nagamootoo as a courageous man then. But I know what Chetty and Janet Jagan thinks of Nagamootoo, even before their death, months before their death, years before their death. So when he said that after Jagan died, this one for you, Pa, Chetty Jagan had absolutely no love or respect for a rank opportunist, a selfish person, one that has done enormous harm to the PPP credibility because he was going around doing dishonest things. And I have proof in the presence of Moses, in the presence of Narbada died, Feroz Mohammed died, but thank God Ronnie Naubat and Charles Ramson still around. About the conduct of this man, he must know what he did in soliciting money from people.
Dr. Gopaul. Dr. Gopaul, you got
no, it's all right, but I'm just telling you about the conduct of this man. And they're there.
That man is planning to sue Vice President Pawachai.
Well, he can sue me at that, but I'm saying, no, but I'm saying that he has no character. Absolutely. When Bonnie Ramson, who's now Justice Ramson, and Frank Basir decided to give statements against him, he called them witness for the prosecution. And you know that man held malice up to now against Justice Ramson. When they took power, and he was the minister responsible for information and prime minister, he decided that he was going to disband either Ramson or the Commission of Information Office. He deprived Ramson of his gratuity and other benefits. Justice Ramson had to go to court against the APNU government and won the case because he violated the Constitution. And this man called himself a working class man, one who fights for justice of the people. Trash, absolute trash. But let me deal with it because I want to clear the air on the GAU de-recognition. I make no apology for the letter sent. I was chairman of the corporation. I sent the letter to the union because there was absolutely indiscipline occurring in the sugar industry at that time. And the sugar industry was threatened by absenteeism, regular absenteeism, some sanctioned by the union. And I pointed out the collective agreement that we had in the manner in which strikes ought to take place and the type of notice which ought to be given so as to avoid damage to the cultivation and loss of sugar cane as a result of flip-on strikes and canes being left in the field burnt or left in the factory, not ground. That letter was a letter just to caution the union, but acts of indiscipline have never ever been tolerated by me, those who know me in my lifetime. When I called a strike as the chairman of LBI branch, the workers had finished preparing the envelope. We had an absolute shutdown of the office. The envelopes were to be filled with money for the sugar workers to receive their money. Those envelopes disappeared. I called the workers together and said, ensure you hand over orderly, hand over the property to the estate management or those who are responsible for the disappearance of the envelope. If it is found that somebody is culpable, that person will be disciplined and they will not have representation from the union. That was the hallmark of my success story. Discipline must be maintained in any field of endeavor. Whether you're managing trade unions, you don't represent people who are wrong. You try to bring them in the right. The workers at that time were wrong in their action, and I brought it to the union's attention. It was a friendly manner. I engaged the union thereafter. We talked. We settled the issues in an amicable manner. I maintained a friendship. Not one day has it been broken with Komal Chan or the leadership of GAU. And today, GAU has been, like it has always been, my second trade union home after Nasi. I maintained the most cordial relationship with Sipal Narayan, with Aslim Singh, with the late Komal Chan. In fact, the Komal family will tell you the regard with which Komal Chan held me. Several of our friends, Feroz Mohammed was pivotal. Komal Chan loved the image of Feroz Mohammed because they grew up together in the party, and whenever he is cornered, he would always seek the advice of Feroz Mohammed. We maintain that relationship, Freddie. And what Nagamootoo said there has not hurt me or will not hurt me because he's not credible. He can't lace my shoe. In 100 years, as I said, Moses Nagamootoo has done nothing for Guyana. Nothing for Guyana. We should not criticize people.
Just to
speak
protect myself and Akash.
Okay, all right.
Can we ask a disclaimer that the views, can I address the...
Sure.
The views of Dr. Nanda Gopaul this evening on this program are his views and not the views
of Freddie Kissoon. I agree.
Akash Persaud. We do not take ownership of those words. Akash?
Yeah, gentlemen, let me first start by saying that it's a pleasure to be sitting here with two icons of the workforce of this country that has been at the helm of the development of this country. History will forever remember both you gentlemen. I want to start with a subject that I believe that the biggest workforce in this country right now is in the construction industry. Investors that have come into Guyana are having issues with people staying home, drinking, you know the story, 1 week you can't come to work. But the migrant workforce has been driving that sector and it's growing every day. But some of those migrant laborers are working under some really harsh conditions, living under some harsh conditions. Is there any way or is there anything that can be done to regularize and normalize working of the immigrants in this country? Because most of them came over from Venezuela and I see them flock in the mornings.
A couple of things. One, the level of the government, we are working on developing a migrant labor policy because there's a recognition of the government. And the president has already spoken to it, vice president. There is a recognition of the government that we would have to import labor to Guyana. Because the things that we have to do and will do to develop this country, even if we train all Guyanese and give them a skill set, we will still be short. Regarding the migrants that are here, that's a conversation that is happening. Just yesterday, I had a meeting with the International Office of Migration and ILO on this same matter. They visited my office. So we are working towards bringing the migrants you talk about out of the shadows, so to speak. We are discussing with the UNHCR, that is the Ministry of Labor and UNHCR, at the level of the Board of Industrial Training, to accredit certificates that they might have, to train those who don't have a skill. So there are several things that are happening at the moment regarding migrants. Importantly, and I always say this to the international partners, the migrant population from Venezuela, there are three sets of migrants. There are Guyanese who left there when we had harsh conditions in the 70s and 80s. They have returned to Guyana.
Right.
Children of those Guyanese, who many of them cannot even speak English, first time they're coming to live here. And then you have Venezuelans, as in who they have no relationship with Guyana. And a fourth set, the indigenous people, the Waraos, they can speak neither English nor Spanish. So, as I say to international partners, it can be a one-size-fits-all program to resolve and to treat and to deal with the matter. But I can say to you in a deliberate way that at the level of the government, we are paying attention to this matter, because it is not a good thing for us to have thousands of people in the shadows.
Right.
If you extend it outside of labor, security issues that can arrive from people not being engaged. But the government, we have taken a lot of action. Labor, as I said, human services, the minister, she is taking action. They are making support available, social service support available to Venezuelan migrants. The woman program, it includes Venezuelan migrant women. They're participating in the training programs that have happened. At the level of education, the Ministry of Education allow for their children to go to school even though they are not documented. And of course, our healthcare facility is open to all who live in this country. And you all would know, gentlemen, there are rich countries in this world who you cannot access healthcare. Guyana is one of the few countries where any person in our space can access our healthcare. Rich countries in this world.
Hip replacement, knee replacement, all free.
Any service.
That's expensive outside.
Any service. One of the only countries around this part of the world. And we must say that. I'm sure Nanda served as Minister of Labor, and he would know. When we are going to Switzerland, Geneva, we have to take out insurance before we are allowed to enter the space, so that we are responsible for our own health care in the event
Minister,
something happens to us.
Minister, I just want to say this, that this morning I saw a clip on social media of a social media influencer who travels the world. He's here in Guyana, and he was saying on that program, this is the only country he's ever been to where healthcare is free. And he travels the world.
My knees are going.
But Minister made this point before, and I want to repeat it because it must have slipped him. He had said, and I'm saying, all workers, whether migrants or what, are covered under our labor laws. And there can be different laws for migrant workers and different. Any employer employing a migrant worker has to pay them based on our labor laws, and our labor laws are exhaustive and very protective. The other thing we did, Minister, in years ago, in my time, we converted the labor laws into Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese. And those have been sent out to various employers who don't understand English fully. So they still have it. Ministers are sure that those things will have to be reproduced again and again, given the situation, what he's talking about. So this government has respect for workers wherever they come from. And the minister and the ministry, and I know because I'm still closely associated with him and the ministry. I head the Trade Union Recognition Board, and recently he has appointed me to a cooperative body. So I see him currently, right now. a national cooperative movement to monitor and supervise
Co-op society.
Co-op society.
Sounds like days are born up anyway.
Yeah, but he wants to. His objective is to ensure that co-ops are run in a business-like. They observe the rules. They don't thief government land and these sort of thing, and you misuse, the thing based on the objective. We want to see proper organized businesses, whether it's cooperatives or what. Anyway, but the minister his ministry has done much more than what was done in the previous 5 years in prosecuting people, in against violation of labor laws.
Glenn Allen paid me a cent after 30 years working there.
Well, have you made a formal report to the Ministry of Labor? No, speaking to me. You're the one. I told you what to do a long time ago. I told you to come.
I paid income tax. I paid NIS.
I told you to come and make a formal report.
Could you please let me get something from
But the thing, going back to the migrants, look, so the point
You're entitled to.
Dr. Gopaul was making, the issue about migrant labor is not just the person or a person. Mm-hmm. It has to extend across the family, and that is the point I was making, where the government is paying attention to social service of an entire family. I forgot to mention, the largest pocket of migrants from Venezuela is there on the Demerara river bank. The Ministry of Housing, as I speak to you, they're engaged with them to bring them out of that condition into proper housing. Wonderful. So it's a holistic approach to dealing with this issue that you raised. And Dr. Gopaul is so right that the law is for everybody. And that is the way we prosecute the law. But what would help migrants is having them documented and bring them out of the shadows, so it would not allow for anyone to take advantage on them. And that is what we're working on. Now Labor Day is tomorrow. And my good friend Nanda is a labor man for decades. I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think one of the things that is holding back representation of workers properly in Guyana is this. Most labor leaders, they are in the bygone era in their thinking. Their thinking is a combat.
Some Jumbie Lash comment?
No. I'm saying they have not modernized their thought processes and approach to labor relations. And if you see it playing out every day, their thing is a combat with government. It is not the colonial master. The approach, and I'm sure Nanda in his book must have indicated, the approach to labor relations when the European colonial master was here, the approach now got to be different to that time. The approach now is not combat. And they are shortchanging employees because they see everything as combat. And the new sphere of labor relations, I'm sure, is the tripartism, as the ILO call it, because it's a recognition of development would only happen in a nation state if you have this continued relationship with government, trade unions, and the business sector. And that is what we strive for. That is what is spoken to and about. If you look at Barbados, they have been able to develop better labor relations because they have signed on to the tripartism. We have, and it's difficult. Look, the labor leaders, not all of them, a lot of them who are prominent, so to speak, it's difficult to sit down at a table and have a conversation with them. It's difficult to negotiate with them because they're dishonorable. You don't know what.
Watch your words.
No, you don't know what they will say and do tomorrow, even after they would have agreed with you of a certain course and approach. And I'm saying, look, the labor unions, they need to replenish the stock, women and young people. They need to be modernized. There is this thing that they have to deal with. And I've said to labor leaders, most of the young people who are young professionals who are going into work, they don't want to be members of any labor union. They don't want to be fixed establishment staff. You know, they have this thing that the government is deliberately putting people on contract. No. Talk, and Freddie, that's an important topic you all should address. Talk to young doctors. Talk to young professionals. They like contract work because twice a year they collect the gratuity and they see that as money without interest rate. And I was exposed to that the first time when I served as parliamentary secretary at the Ministry of Health, where young doctors will come to me and say, Minister, when I collect my neck gratuity, I will go put on my foundation, or I will go put on, buy a car, or I'll go buy my windows to put in. And that's the reason why the government, we have given people the option. You want to go on a fixed establishment, you can. If you want to be on contract, you are allowed to be on contract. You know what Granger government did? They forced every doctor in their time who were on contract to go into
the civil service scale.
Yes. And you know what? Caused those people to lose millions of dollars during the period because they were not qualified for gratuity that they were accustomed to. Since we came into government, that's one of the first things we brought to an end. So the thing is, as I have said, when you're talking about this type of development, the success is tripartism. And if you look at what the ILO and all the labor, international labor people speaking about, it's not combat, it's partnership. That is how the employees will benefit. And I would hope that that my labor union friends, they take that for whatever it's worth. The last time I spoke about this matter, a labor leader said I was chastising them, Nanda.
Well, it's a type of discipline I'm talking about.
This is a fine book. I would hope that you have copies in case people call for this is a good book on workers' struggle. I, as a historian, someone trained in history, I will rate it highly. If you want to understand the 70s and the 80s, you should read this book. Now, I'm asking you, on page 386, you said on this book, what kind of leadership are workers really looking for? That question is still relevant in 2024. What are you satisfied that workers getting good leadership? Before you go on, Patrick Yard is 35 years as head of the president of the Public Service Union. Lincoln Lewis is 33 years head of the TUC. So I ask you in your book on page 386, what kind of leadership are workers really looking for? Do you want to answer that?
Well, it doesn't matter how long Joseph Polidor was there for a long time. How long you are in the union is what you do and how you conduct the business of the organization, and whether you continue to conduct the business in a democratic manner, involve the membership in every aspect. Mrs. Thatcher had passed a labor law in 1984 to ensure that every 10 years, the entire membership poll and for the leadership of the union, especially the full-time leaders. And I think we may need to pass legislation to ensure, because that is democratization. Very often the union leadership is aloof from the membership, and the membership don't subscribe to them. Their delegates, as I've written in the book about how the fraudulent delegate status in the TUC resulted in unions taking control of that body, the inflated members, etc. So I think basically, Freddie, what workers are looking for is good governance in union, leaders who have integrity, who can give leadership, who, when they speak on issues to the public, they don't come over as blow, as the workers would say, but that they come over as serious leaders and that they don't take partisan position. I have argued that all my life. You can't speak to one administration in a different manner or with forked tongue, and then when another administration takes power, you try to crucify them, you try to fight them for less. And even if they do more, you don't recognize what they are doing. Look what has happened in the teacher strike. I want to say this, in all my 50-odd years as a trade unionist, I have never ever seen, and I'm saying anybody can research it, I have never ever seen a union in 1 year get so many benefits agreed upon between the Ministry of Education and them. And yet, in the midst of the talks, you go in and call a strike. There are numerous benefits. I can highlight them. Nearly 20 odd. If that is not collective bargaining, I don't know what it is. Collective bargaining is about bargaining every time, and it is not about wages and salary, but those were not only non-monetary benefits. Many of them were monetary benefits, and the teachers signed on to it, the union signed on to them. And when President Ali met with the teachers' leadership, not the union leadership, headmasters, headmistresses in school, influential teachers, because he felt he should address them and talk with them after he recognized what was playing out. He resolved, in addition to what the ministry resolved, most of the issues raised at that meeting. And then they're going to say talking with the teachers it's not like talking with the union. Now an employer has a fundamental right to speak with his workers, just like a union got a right to speak to its members. And what President Ali did there was absolutely, in fact, should be commended, is absolutely within the realm of his leadership. That is leadership. I don't only want to speak to the union, and leaders, I want to speak with the workers. And he didn't deprive them and restrict them of saying they spoke their mind. Every one of them raised issues, and all of those issues that could have been possibly resolved, and the minister knew that, they resolved them. And then not only that, they went to court. And then they a decision was made, and I don't want to deal with the issue of the decision, but I think I'm free to criticize one aspect of the decision, which
of course that's the right of every citizen,
which deprived the minister of his role under the Act, under 41C of the Labour Act. The minister has right, if he feels that the matter is injurious to national interest, to act in a certain manner. He could either set up a commission of inquiry or invoke arbitration. And I want to discuss this issue of arbitration, but another day on your program.
You have it in your book here, yeah.
That the minister was deprived of that chance to set up either mediation or that. Then the judge took it upon himself to appoint mediators to discuss who the mediators will talk with, what will they resolve. You cannot trespass on the role of a minister in that manner, and that is what the judge did. The other thing he did, without thinking, was to say that there was no aspect of collective bargaining, when in fact issues were resolved month after month in talking with the union. Well, look, I will fight for workers tooth and nail every day. I will seek to improve their livelihood every day. I will not be satisfied until they get more and more and more, but I will do so in a responsible manner. I will be rational, I'll be objective, I will be within the confines of rules and laws govern industrial relations. What has happened over the last few months in this country has destroyed the process of collective bargaining. Even under Mr. Burnham time, when we struck in the sugar industry, as a way of resolving the issue, Mr. Prime Minister Burnham call his Minister of Labor to invoke that same act. The Haynes arbitration, the Crane arbitration, the Moore arbitration tribunal, all these things, Gaya Persaud, all came with either the Commission of Inquiry Act or under 41C, where the minister is of the view that the matter is injurious to national interest. They didn't allow the minister the opportunity to decide what he wants. They went to the chief labor officer. The chief labor officer determined that the issue has not reached the level of conciliation, that they haven't exhausted the procedure. But if the matter had gone on and a crisis had faced the nation with teachers proceeding to take strike action without resorting to the court, and if the strike action had continued, the minister would have been then left with no alternative but to decide a way to bring an end to the strike. He would have afforded a manner of resolution to the issue. And not because people say, well, we won't talk now, doesn't mean that 2 days after. Industrial relations is a complex thing, very complex, and one that you have to be flexible. You can never be inflexible and hope to achieve anything around the bargaining table.
But that's the point I was raising earlier, that it cannot be combat. If you make out the government or any employer as the devil incarnate, how do you sit with them and have a conversation with them? And you're chanting that. The other important thing to note, and I've said this before, the teachers' strike is no way different than any other strike because it is workers and an employer. Some people try to make it out like this is a special case. It is not a special case. When the nurses, they struck, it is not a strike. Some people wanted me during the period to apparently create regulations to fit this special purpose thing that they see it. When we had the labor laws circumscribe every employer and employee. You can't fiddle with it. Because if you fiddle with it for your teachers, when the nurses, they strike, you would fiddle with it. And then we will have anarchy. And some people were of the view that no process should be allowed to, Hamilton must jump in the middle of it and bring it to an end. And the fact that that was not happening, I suspect that is the reason why the court, they sought refuge in the court, I would want to say. And quickly, let me say this, we're still waiting on this judgment, 2 weeks don't pass, right? And
the written judgment.
The written judgment, we're still waiting, all of us.
That's going to be interesting because you're going to see which laws.
I, as minister, I have a great interest because I need to decipher what this written judgment is saying or not saying. So I'm still waiting.
The written thing is important.
But I say this, Labor Day is upon us tomorrow, and I'm reiterating this point. Labor relations today is not the same thing like 50, 60 years ago. And we have to have modernized thinking. The engagement's got to be different. Yes. You have to see employer as a partner in the process because both parties are saying the interests primarily is that of the workers. And I intervened in some matters like that. There were matters when I became minister, and Nanda being chairman of the Trade Union Recognition Board. There were matters that were there 5 years languishing. You had situations where employers were not even speaking to their workers' representatives. And in a period of less than 4 years, we have had some 20-odd collective labor agreements signed with government entities and trade unions and private sector companies and trade unions. And that is because the intervention was always to make this point. Look, this is not combat. At the end of the day, both parties, you said that, listen, you have the interests of the workers at heart. We have to resolve this. Importantly, and one that Nanda touched on earlier, you cannot argue the case of workers' rights and representing them just discussing dollars and cents. There are also important things in that collective labor agreement must capture. The rights of workers to work in a safe space. You must capture that, because you raise the man's salary, you argue his case, and you're able to raise his salary for $5,000 a day, and he died tomorrow. What have you done for him? Educational benefits and development, all of those things, in my view, modern collective labor agreements must capture a lot of non-cash benefits. If you look at, I don't know if Nanda had time to look at the GTT PTWU collective labor agreement, one of the most progressive CL signed in this country.
And CGPL.
And CGPL, because it speaks a lot about non-financial benefits that will be beneficial to the workers. GT&T CL talk about training and development for staff and the graduation of salaries once they acquire certain skill sets and that kind of thing. So you have to modernize thinking. It is not combat. It is not just what type of salaries or wages the person will receive. It has to deal with safety and health, fundamental. And now ILO, they have extended safety and health to be mental safety. Oil and gas companies recognize, they have psychiatrists and psychologists because people's mental stability is fundamental through morale and development of workforces. So I would hope that as we approach Labor Day, gentlemen, the people who represent workers, they can refine their methodology as regards representing workers. And the government as an employer is willing to sit and discuss these matters, because at the end of the day, as the president and the government, our position is, this country is for all of us, and we want every Guyanese to benefit substantially in the development of the country.
Akash,
I know we run out of time, but
so
I cannot have you gentlemen here not ask this question. I have lived, and I've heard, and I've lived the horrors of the public service, labor force, and workforce. I'm telling you, there are unproductive workers sitting at places, and all you hear, we can't touch them, we can't, and because the union won't come in. But the union should be against that sort of thing, non-productive employees, and try to get, like, if you want an organization to progress and move forward, I'm telling you, gentlemen, and I'm sure you know this, the public service workforce of this country has serious problems. How do we fix this?
Well, I will tell you this. I have never seen indiscipline in all my life. When I was the chairman of the Georgetown Public Hospital Board, from among, and Michael Kahn was an absolutely good administrator. He tried. They were very good professional doctors and nurses, but there were some who were highly unprofessional in their conduct. And the moment you move to discipline them, you have problems, like they come down like a ton of bricks, and they want to fight you. I've seen the other day a posting where someone beat up a patient.
Wow.
And when the worker who beat up the patient, the nurse, was sanctioned by the employer, they run all over the Ministry of Labor, all over. They want to represent that. You see it on video, bro. And then you're going to represent that? That is the responsibility to the highest.
They got
the highest.
They got people going to work.
working class thing. You see it, bro.
Yeah. You go.
You lost your working class thing as yet, but this question has to be asked of both of you. Do employers today, when they examine, I know a union approached Republic Bank. Republic Bank gave recognition, and then they withdrew it because they found out certain things. When companies look at the trade union scene today, and they see some of the things that are so different from the rest of the world, and talking about elections within the union. You mention it here on your book. You mention on page 280 something about the need for periodic elections, legitimate elections in the unions. Both of you, when these companies that are pouring into Guyana, they must do their due diligence. They must look at this union, that union, who is this. What do they see?
Well, a couple of things.
It's not a good sight.
A couple of things. Look, and I've said this to union leadership, because many of them have approached me dealing with the oil and gas sector, which is a new sector. And I've said this to them: you cannot want to engage in discussion and you want to be doing it on Cultural News front page. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. The party will not engage you. So, if you want indeed to represent workers' interests in any sector, Nanda would tell you got decades of there are several things and mediums you utilize. People who can talk to people. It is not a rambunctious thing. You go cuss out the company before you even engage them. You say things about them that you can't verify or validate, that you just hear. You know, I as minister, there are several things I've heard about the oil and gas sector. Unless I can validate, I don't venture to speak on them. But the question you ask, in all the sectors, the newness of approach to negotiate with companies, and that's the question you're asking. Whilst the people were talking to Republic Bank, I know, and I'm sure Nanda, it came to the trade union record. You know, whilst the people were talking to Republic Bank, they were talking to the press. I mean, you cannot do that. The person would not see you as a partner. You have to be a trusted partner in negotiations, in labor relations, because there are many things and many conversations outside of the public sphere and the press that you would have to reach resolution. So how do you get to this place, Freddie? And I'm championing that all workers should have recognized union representation. But unless the methodologies are changed as regards how they prosecute this, they will have a lot of problems for companies to allow relating with you, treating with you. And it goes back to the employer must be your partner. It can't be your enemy. You can't use language that describe the man you want to negotiate with across the table in the way that we have seen people are doing. But I would hope that the trade union movement, in all respect, most of them need new blood. Women, different thinking, young people. I think that is one issue that is stymieing the trade union leadership.
When people look at the scene today, when you come to an employer for recognition, when they look at the trade union scene today, it can't be what you wrote here. This is a fine book of trade union struggle, resistance and change, the struggle of Guyanese workers, 1964-1994. I really think people should get this book. When I read this book again when I read this book yesterday morning, coming for this interview here, and the question about what do you see today, Gopes?
It's pathetic. It is really sad. You know the reason, Freddie? I did the biography of Ashton Chase.
Oh yes, Ashton Chase, the Bengal Tiger.
But this is a compilation of Hansards of what Ashton would have said in Parliament while he was a parliamentarian. But if trade union leaders were to read this and read what I've said, and it carries a lot of what Ashton Chase did for the labor movement. We would have had a different trade union movement, completely different. No trade union. Ashton Chase got an act of parliament to be reversed. First time in the history of this country, the Labour Amendment Act. Ashton Chase won that case of taking away the increments, the T-Mall case. You remember the famous Siran T-Mall
voices? Yeah, you mentioned it.
Right. So they're there, but it is that is with the union NASI. But we didn't do it cussing down the employers, fighting down even the PNC government at that time. We did it in an objective manner. The Stanley Moore Commission of Inquiry, Moore gave us less than what we had negotiated when they'd asked him to think. We merely sent back the report in a box.
Yeah, you have a whole chapter here on T-Mall.
Yeah, like a thing that said, rest in peace. We decided that we were going to pursue it again, and then we ended up in arbitration, the Haynes. And you know what Haynes did for the workers? Give them benefits of an unprecedented nature that we bought Nasi, High Street, Kingston. Mm-hmm. We outbid Burnham them to buy that building. Dr. Bender owned it. And one payday for the workers, they contributed money, 10% of their wages.
Our operator signal that we have to go just briefly on this day, Labor Day, briefly. What you want to say to workers?
Well,
you're the Minister of Labor. They're looking to you.
I would say happy Labor Day. I would say that the workers of this country must know, and enough evidence they have seen in the last 4 years or less than, that this government is paying attention to your interests. This government is transforming this country, and this government will continue to work in the best interest of all Guyanese, regardless where they reside.
Nanda, you're one of the most experienced trade unionists right now in Guyana. You have to look hard to find someone whose experience is more longer than yours, over 50 years. Quickly?
I want to say that Minister said what they're doing, what the government doing for workers, and one area that people have overlooked is the amazing housing drive. And I know because I had one of the leading financial institutions in Guyana,
NBIC.
the NBS,
NBS,
which, and I can tell you, the statistics will show we have never, ever given out more loans than we have given out over the last 2 years.
Wow.
And for this year alone, 1,900 persons have gotten loans at the cheap interest rate of 3.5%.
We got to go. You have $4,000. I know you're busy, so I will drive at Austin and buy my copy. You have
He tried to sell me the book.
What?
He tried to sell me the book.
Nagamootoo?
Yeah.
Well,
He's been trying to sell me the book over 2 weeks now.
I will go and buy it, man.
And I need to read the book what the man said about him.
I didn't want to read the book, but I buy it because
I can go buy it. I can go buy it. I have no time to go to But
Nagamootoo will commend you for trying to sell his book.
You know more books that have been sold because of our publicity.
We gotta go. 2 things before we go. Happy Labor Day. Minister Hamilton, please speak to Guyana. I worked 30 years there. I paid NIS, paid income tax, and I haven't got a cent.
Just to say, you have to make a formal report.
And I can
tell you, free legal advice. You're entitled to 1 year pay.
Oh God, please get them on for me. Before we go, I just feel safe saying that the words of the minister and Dr. Gopaul are their own words. We don't claim responsibility for them. Those words do not reflect our position. This is Labor Day. Have a happy Labor Day. Our guest was Minister of Labor for the 4th time, Honorable Joseph Hamilton, Member of Parliament, and one of Guyana's most experienced trade unionists, and author of a fine book on workers' struggle. We will see you on Wednesday on behalf of Akash Persaud. Catch you later. Bye-bye.